the leader in talk radio on the Internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
If you want to work until you keel over, have less of everything in retirement, or give back more of your hard-earned money to the stock market again, then just ignore me. But if you'd like to protect the money you save, receive a steady, predictable retirement income, and enjoy financial security for as long as you live, then listen to this. You can download a free report that reveals the wealth-building secrets Wall Street and the banks don't want you to know. You'll learn how you can get guaranteed growth, safety, and real prosperity without risking your money in the Wall Street casino, and how to get the money you need when you need it, simply by asking for it. This is the best way to have a 100% secure retirement and know your money will last as long as you do. To learn more about this method and to get your free report, go to 29security.com. That's the number 29security.com. 29security.com. Go to 29security.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
All right, folks, this is Rick Robinson with you. I want to tell you about some friends of mine from a company called Security Enforcement Specialists. When I ran my security agency for 12 years, I worked with one of these partners on a daily basis. He's been involved in this agency now, and with his other partner, they do have over 30 years of experience in the private security industry. If you own a business and you need someone to keep you or your customers or residents safe, then I highly recommend contacting Security Enforcement Specialists today. Give them a call at 405-703-1796. Again, that's 405-703-1796. Again, tell them Rick from K98 Talk sent you. Like I said, if you need the help, they are here for you. So make sure that you go look them up, check them out, and see what they can do.
The wrong way. Welcome to the place. Welcome.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000. My heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
The Internet will never be the same. You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Wow. Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely.
Get ready to fight from within. You're about to go behind enemy lines on WNJC.
Roger, 3-2. Goliath copies all. Go ahead. The target is surrounded by multiple firms entering what appears to be a residential area. Requesting permission to engage. Over.
From the People's Republic of New York City, you're now going behind enemy lines with Gene Baradelli and Russ Gallo.
And you're now behind enemy lines. Hey there, how you doing, America? Gene Baradelli here with you on another lovely evening here in the People's Republic of New York City. Glad you could be with us. Time to caucus in Nevada. Yes, there are some candidates rolling the dice tonight as we speak. Some people are going to have a good hand. Some people are going to have probably, as they call it, the nuts, which is be the best hand. Some are going to have the worst hand. We shall see. Let the chips fall where they may. Nevada is caucusing. And you know what, folks? If I was a betting man, I would be betting on Donald Trump right now. If you check out the exit polling going on from Reuters, and actually they didn't do exit polling. They did a 5-day rolling poll. You got to check it out. Reuters has it up on their site. All signs point to another Donald Trump victory, and we're talking big, folks. Reuters, in the 5-day rolling poll they have going on right now, has Trump up 41%. Ted Cruz, the senator from Texas, at 18.5%. Marco Rubio at close to 13%. Ben Carson breaking double digits at 10%. And John Kasich bringing up the rear at 7%. Let's call it 8%. Let's be generous. We're going to be nice to John Kasich. John Kasich has been under a lot of pressure lately. I feel like we need to be nice to him. A lot of people telling him that he needs to pull a Jeb Bush and get out of the race. And he seems to be getting slammed from all sides. Establishment types are going to slam him for staying in the race, for hurting the chances of the last great establishment hope, Marco Rubio. And we'll get to that label in a second if that's fair or not. And also, he's getting pressured from conservatives and Trump supporters and Tea Partiers and whoever you might want to call them out there. You know, let's just call it the collective conservative movement right now, because there's a lot of fractures in it. Being told that, you know what, step aside, you're not the guy, you know you're not the guy, and that's all there is to it. The Nevada caucus, as we're doing the show, is underway. Hopefully we'll be able to get you some results by the end of the show. But let's look at some of this exit polling. I found this to be pretty interesting. Yes, I'm a nerd, okay? Thanks for pointing that out. I find polling interesting. Here's the thing. Donald Trump is leading over the field in so many categories, except for maybe one. Here's the thing. Yes, Trump is going to cruise to victory tonight, no pun intended. But is it a real victory for the Republican Party? In certain aspects, yes. In certain aspects, no. When we talk about people who are very conservative, see, Reuters broke it down for us. When we talk about people who are very conservative, Donald Trump is not winning those voters. People who identify as very conservative are picking Senator Ted Cruz 8 points over Donald Trump, both of them breaking 30%. Significant because you have a clear fracture in the quote-unquote very conservative voting bloc. Not good news for Ted Cruz. A divided House cannot stand on its own, right? So we are looking at a split almost down the middle of the conservative movement. Those people who consider themselves moderately conservative. Rhino, excuse me. Oh, did I say that? Those who consider themselves moderately conservative are going for Trump in a big, big way. 48%, breaking the vote total he has for cumulative voters. Marco Rubio in second with 13, so he's doing just about the same as he was across the board. And Ted Cruz underperforming with those who consider themselves moderately conservative with 12%. That's very telling. To me, yes, it's one state, and yes, we shouldn't use one state to be the barometer for the nation. But this is the latest polling, and I think what we can see is that Ted Cruz may have a problem with those people who consider themselves moderates. And a lot of times, folks, moderates also consider themselves to be independents. Yes, you can have an independent with conservative leaning. Yes, you can have an independent with liberal leaning. But you don't really hear about independents being so passionate one way or the other that you can think that they will fall in that other category of either conservative or liberal every single time. They seem to blow with the wind. They stay right in the middle. Moderates. Ted Cruz seems to have a problem with moderates in Nevada because he's underperforming with them. This is where it gets a little weird. Because when you look at people who self-identify as Tea Party voters, you would think they would go with what a very conservative self-identifying voter would say and go with Ted Cruz leading. Not the case here. Tea Party voters go for Trump 36%, 6% more than the very conservative voter, but Ted Cruz drops to 17, more than half, with self-identifying Tea Party voters. I can't figure that one out, folks. Usually the two kind of run together. You're very conservative and you're a Tea Party voter. This could be a sign, as we've said when we looked at the results in Iowa, as we said when we looked at the results in New Hampshire, that the Tea Party is becoming a broader base of voters. People that may not consider themselves to be conservative in the traditional sense. And they're going for Donald Trump. By the way, number 3 you would think would be Marco Rubio among Tea Party favorites, but he's dropped to number 4 behind Ben Carson. Yes, I said Ben Carson is actually beating Marco Rubio in a category in these Reuters polls in Nevada. Very interesting. Again, the Tea Party seems to have a soft spot for Dr. Ben Carson. They seem to like what he's about. Again, people, if you are out there and you support Dr. Ben Carson, can you raise your hands for me, please? I'd like to try to identify this group and see exactly where you fall within the traditional lines of conservative, moderate, liberal, whatever, demographic-wise, income-wise, social view-wise. Let us know who you are. Stand up and be heard. Raise your hand. We need to figure out this phenomenon, really. So, it's kind of a weird dynamic between Tea Party and conservatives. Maybe the definitions are not what we think they are, at least for this election. When you look at education levels in these 5-day rolling polls from Reuters in the great state of Nevada, if you had less than a high school education, Trump was your guy, 34%. The more education you had, Trump still led, but led by less. If you're a college-educated voter, Trump 24, Rubio 18, Cruz 16. If you have education beyond college, like myself and my friend Matt Fairley, who's going to be joining us for our interview later with Sean McCutcheon, 22% Trump, 18 Rubio, 17 Cruz. Tightly packed, tightly split amongst highly educated voters. Again, this is where it gets interesting. If you have less than a high school education, yes, Trump is winning. But guess who's in second? The couch. That's right, folks. This is the entity, this is the candidate, quote unquote, that nobody wants to talk about. People said that if they're not voting for Trump, they're staying home, more so than supporting any other candidate. They won't go out and vote. 28% of people who say they have less than a high school education chose not to vote at all. That's telling. And that's not the only group where this happened in this poll. Minorities. And by minorities, we mean black voters and Hispanic voters, and I guess other races put together. Minorities go for Trump 30%, but the couch gets 23%. Again, very telling to me that the couch is going to beat the Republican field except for Donald Trump. But now what happens? This screws the Republican Party. Because if people are going to be staying home and you're competing against Democrats who may be motivated to stop a Donald Trump, what happens is you lose that state. You may lose that election because the couch will win out. When the couch wins, people get into office that shouldn't be in office. Because, and it's your own fault, really, because your party wasn't motivated to come out and vote. This could be a phenomenon we should watch as Donald Trump racks up more and more wins. And you know what, folks? When we talk about what's going to be happening in Nevada this week, let's be clear. This is not a huge election. It's not huge, Trump supporters. Does it build momentum? Yeah. Absolutely, it builds momentum. And you're going to need momentum heading into Super Tuesday, which is just around the corner. Is this an indicator of who should leave and who should stay? I mean, common knowledge amongst politicos these days is that it's a three-person race right now. It's Trump, Cruz, and Rubio, and let the chips fall where they may. But there may be some things coming up, like Ohio, that could give a good indication of who the second choice should be. If John Kasich has a great turnout in his home state, and he's able to deliver Ohio, think about how much more attractive he becomes to the eventual winner of the presidential sweepstakes on the Republican side. Any minor candidate that delivers a state should be able to boost that candidate in that state. And Ohio is going to be one of those states that may be in play for the general election. I think that John Kasich is going to stay in the race beyond Nevada, though he's getting the call to step down and not run and clear the way, old man, and all that nonsense. And I think you're going to see John Kasich hang in there just to see what happens in Ohio. Ben Carson is another story. I think it's time for Dr. Carson to end the book tour and to move on to the next project. I think it's that time. Ben Carson doesn't really serve any further purpose other than to pull conservative voters away from Rubio and Cruz. And honestly, Rubio and Cruz are so close together right now. Ben Carson could be a kingmaker amongst conservative voters. He could tip the scale between that whole Cruz-Rubio battle right now. This might be the best time for Ben Carson to get out of a race. He might be playing a little bit of a kingmaker going forward. It's something to discuss. And speaking of discussing political events and caucuses and presidential elections and all that stuff, while we're doing a live show here right now, we got a chat room going at www.behindenemylinesradio.us. click on the Listen Live button. You'll be taken to a beautiful world of conservative thought and a little bit of sarcasm and some ribbing with a bunch of our good friends and fans in the chat room. And you're welcome to participate with us as the show goes live. Checking in the chat room, we're seeing some comments. One of our listeners' takes from this whole thing is that Kasich has no chance, and that the takeaway from the polling is that idiots like Trump. And it explains the support of Russ Scalo. Wow. I'm going to tell him you said that when he comes back. Russ is, of course, working tonight. Shout out to Russ and the great article he wrote, which we'll be talking about later in the show. And you know what? We want to just give a shout out to our fan Dano, who was in a little bit of a weather situation in his house, and we're glad that he's okay, even though things got crazy for a little while. Glad you're doing well, pal. Welcome into the chat. Folks, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, Matt Fairley and I will give you our interview with Sean McCutcheon of the famed Supreme Court decision of McCutcheon versus FEC that really made liberal heads explode. And he's going to talk to you about why we don't need less campaign money in politics. We need more campaign money in politics. We'll be discussing that with him and after the interview as well. So let's take that break right now. Gene Baradelli, Behind Enemy Lines. We'll be back.
I'm Vito.
And I'm Vito. And we're from WNJC's The Vito and Vito Show.
Every Friday at 1 p.m., you can hear Vito and Vito bring you the perspectives of two college-age millennial conservatives who are committed to defending the principles of free markets, liberty, freedom, and individualism from Brooklyn, New York.
Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Vito and Vito Show. And check out our blog posts and articles at VitoandVito.com.
Vito and Vito Show every Friday, 1 p.m. on WNJC 1360 AM, Philadelphia's Renaissance Station. In Brooklyn,
it's nothing but the truth.
There's a movement in healthcare today. It's a movement of people that's ready to stand up and take charge of their healthcare. It's people like you and me who are tired of paying too much for healthcare and getting too little. People who are standing up for their values and letting their conscience make decisions based on timeless principles. It's a movement that's sweeping the nation, and you need to be a part of it. Liberty HealthShare is leading the movement of people who are looking for an alternative to traditional health insurance. Liberty HealthShare is a healthcare sharing organization of people who are sharing the cost of healthcare in an easy and efficient way. Choose your own doctor, your own hospital, and live out your values in healthcare. Join the movement. Together, we're changing healthcare for good. Go to www.joinlhs.com or call 800-722-8041.
Who might you save?
Your mother, your father, your husband, uncle, aunt, son.
Learn FAST, F-A-S-T, the sudden signs of a stroke, and you could save.
Your friend, teacher, boss.
F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. F-A-S-T. That's F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911. The sooner they get to the hospital, the sooner they'll get treatment. And that can make a remarkable difference in the recovery of
your neighbor, the waiter, grandmother, grandfather.
So learn FAST, the sudden signs of a stroke, then pass it on, because you never know who might save you.
Your wife, your colleague.
Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
Behind Enemy Lines. Back on the air.
Gene Baradelli, back behind enemy lines. I got a resident, I want to say constitutional scholar, but the closest thing we have to one, Matt Fairley, with us, and on the line with both of us right now. It is a pleasure to welcome to the show Sean McCutcheon, famous for, of course, McCutcheon versus FEC, the landmark decision that has liberal heads exploding throughout the 2016 election cycle. Sean, how are we doing, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. Glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on. First off, let's get into just some 2016 stuff. We're going to be wonking out on some legal stuff in a little bit. You're a Donald Trump supporter, I hear? Is that true?
Yes, sir, all the way back to 2014. In fact, he came down to New Orleans, the Southern Leadership Conference, and congratulated me in the back room on the victory. You know, on April 2nd of 2014 was the victory, and then I saw him later on that year, and I've been a fan ever since.
All right. Is Donald as bombastic in person as he is on the stage?
Well, in person, no. I'd say he is very direct. I watched him talk to several different political people, and it really depends on whether he likes you or doesn't like you. Some of the guys he just asked to leave the room, and then others he carried on a conversation with. But he's very blunt and direct, and I like that. Now,
do Donald and you share the same view on the outcome of that seminal decision, McCutcheon versus FEC, and how does he feel about money and contributions and campaign finance issues, from your understanding?
Well, I think he's got some mixed emotions compared to me, but as far as my case, he was very happy about it. He told me in person that it was a great job and he liked it. Of course, my case was about private individual donations direct to campaigns, but Trump has also said some things about super PACs, which is Citizens United and Speech Now, that haven't been so positive. But as far as what McCutcheon was about, he was very happy about it.
Matt, I know you want to walk out on some of this stuff, so go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad you brought up Citizens United, because while I think everyone on this call is going to agree that an individual has probably an unlimited right to participate in an election any way that they seem, a lot of the concerns that have gone on about, say, the non-individual actors, corporations, super PACs, is about the lack of transparency and the lack of accountability from where this money is coming from. You know, you're an advocate of seeing more money, seeing an expanded, use of money in politics. What is your response to those people who criticize this lack of transparency with the super PACs and all those other non-individual actors?
Well, I think there's more transparency than there was. In my view, a lot of those cases actually created more transparency. And in my case, for example, Chief Justice Roberts wrote about transparency. And more money in politics is wonderful. You can see in this election cycle, which I'm very excited about, what more competition and more messaging does. It's just free speech, and it's just getting the message out and informing the voters. So it's an excellent thing, and we should be able to support as many candidates and PACs and parties as we choose. I mean, it's more money in politics is a good thing.
Just to follow up on that, I think that what people are most concerned about, obviously transparency, very important issue, and while Justice Roberts addressed that, there was an issue with reporting in the 2012 cycle, which I think will be fixed this time around. But I think people are worried about the disproportionality of the messages that the money backs. Should that be a concern for citizens to really care about this disproportionality? I mean, some people want to call it the 1% versus the 99%, but it seems like the more money, more access to the message, and the message gets out more. But it's not necessarily the message that the majority believes in.
Well, we need to hear all the messages so we can pick the best one. And there's no such thing as too much free speech. I mean, it's water off a duck's back. I mean, and look at the organizations where small donors join together, like labor unions and other, advocacy groups that raise tons of money and get their message out. So if you don't have enough money to run one of these $1 million TV ads, you can join a group that does. But certainly nobody should be limited, because freedom is about not being limited. And, the free speech benefits everybody from top to bottom. And we need the transparency. I totally agree, because the one thing we do need is to make sure that the money is American money going into American elections. But as far as the issues go, issue groups don't need to reveal their donors, especially not small donors. So I'm in agreement with the Citizens United and all the decisions. It makes perfect sense. And then if you look at what the media does, the tons of money and influence that the media has on elections, and they don't reveal their sources, and who knows where their money comes from, and they have as much influence as anybody. So, like Scalia said, the PACs and the super PACs are doing the same thing that the New York Times does every day.
It's interesting you bring up the late Justice Scalia. He was an originalist of the text. And how would you answer those who say that nowhere in the text do the rights that are enumerated in the Constitution they're always referred to people, the people, the people. It never refers to corporations. How do you respond to that those arguments that say that, corporations and PACs aren't the types of organizations that the founders wanted to be involved in politics and to have the rights that were enumerated in the Constitution?
Well, the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law, and, no law means freedom. It means they shouldn't be trying to prevent it. And I think what the framers had in mind with the First Amendment and the free speech and political assembly and free media was they did not want the government limiting the people's ability to engage in political activity, because the best government comes from a system where the people select their leaders, okay? It's our most fundamental right to select our leaders, and putting laws out there that do campaign finance, just all those do is favor the incumbents and the people that are writing the laws, i.e. the government, whereas the election power should stay with the people. So it's about the separation of powers, but it's more than just three. The people have power too, and that's elections and our power of free speech.
I remember, I think it was last year, Sean, that you were involved in the litigation going on here in the People's Republic of New York with, I believe it was NYPPP versus Walsh. And now it looks like, at least here, like I said, in the People's Republic of New York, that they're going to be moving towards more of a model where you have a regulated campaign finance board and all money that goes into the campaigns for statewide offices are public money. And they're going to be changing the law, changing the New York election law, at least this is what the liberals want to do, to make it so that the money is limited and it has to go through the channels of the government. What do you say about systems like that we have in the People's Republic of New York City and soon to be possibly in the state as well?
Well, that's a real bad idea because it's just going to limit the voters' choices, and it's just a system where the government incumbents are selecting who's going to be in the government. So it's a closed system. Public money is a bad idea because they're going to control who gets the money, and then they'll control who does the messages, and that'll just shut everybody out, any challengers or anybody that disagrees with them. They're just wanting to shut up anybody that disagrees with them, and that is not a good or legitimate purpose. So I think that's contrary to the First Amendment and a real bad idea in a free country.
All right, I'm just going to take the last question here, Matt. I know you got a ton more to talk about, but I just want to I hear the notes being scribbled as we speak, but we have to get out there right now. Of course, SeanMcCutcheon.org, is that right, or is it .com? I forget. I always get those two mixed up.
I'm chairman of Conservative Action Fund, and yes, I have conservativeactionfund.com and also SeanMcCutcheon.com for my personal website. Again, SeanMcCutcheon.com outlines the free speech and the McCutcheon versus Federal Election Commission landmark Supreme Court case. But also I'm chairman of Conservative Action Fund, which is a conservative super PAC that's been advocating, constitutional candidates in several elections now.
Who would have thought you'd be the head of an action fund? Shocking. I know our audience's mouth is agape right now. Of course you are, and we're glad that you're participating and helping others to participate as well. Conservative Action Fund, go check it out, guys. One last question, Sean, and then we're going to let you go. As you see this race going towards Super Tuesday, are you willing to go on record and say that there's going to be a nominee decided after Super Tuesday, and that nominee is most likely going to be Donald Trump?
Well, I certainly hope that, and I'm a delegate, place 5. I'm actually going to be elected to be a Trump delegate for Alabama on Super Tuesday. So, yes, I believe Trump will, be moving forward. He won't quite. It's only 25% on that Super Tuesday, so he won't quite have the nomination. But it'll become clear that he's very, very competitive towards getting there. So I'm excited about it, and I think Trump shows us what messaging and media and a lot of candidates and competition can do, and how well informed we are. And it's great for the GOP too. He's done so much for the GOP because we have a real contest. We have, it's not just the same old Clintons like the Democrats are going to have. We actually had a real contest, and it wasn't decided from the start. So I think the Republican Party has made a lot of improvements towards having a real competitive process, which is what free speech does. Now, Trump managed to get the media to pay for a lot of his, but believe me, a lot of money was still spent on getting those messages out. And I think this election cycle shows you that more money in politics is a better result.
You know what? I think, Matt, do you want to take that last one? You think more money is going to give a better result here? I'm excited to see that, there's small donors bundling for all these different candidates, but I think there might be, and maybe I'll let Matt Fairley articulate it, because,
go ahead. Again, it just only goes back to my position is that, as long as there's the transparency of who's donating what to whom, then we know, and I think,
and that's been improving a lot more.
Had that conversation. And you and I, you answered that earlier, Mr. McCutcheon, that as long as we have, the knowledge of who's donating what to where, sunshine is the best disinfectant, as they say.
Yes,
Absolutely.
sir. I'm on board with the transparency and making sure that it's, especially private money, certainly private people should not be limited, so I'm really pleased with what Chief Justice Roberts wrote in my case about transparency and also about, the other issues.
Absolutely. Listen, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's so great when a couple of guys from Brooklyn can get on the phone with a guy from Alabama, and we can have a battle of the accents talking about constitutional law. It's great, isn't it? Thanks so much for coming on.
And I'm going to come back up there and strike down those laws they're trying to pass.
Oh, listen, we'll go out for a drink, and we'll talk about that real soon. We can even talk about it at CPAC next week. Sean, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And we are at halftime here behind Enemy Lines. I want to thank everybody for tuning into the show. I'm Gene Baradelli. Russ is away this week. But while we got you listening, check us out at www.behindenemylinesradio.us. Check us out on the Facebooks and the Twitters at BEL_radio. And if you missed any part of this live broadcast here behind Enemy Lines, you can check us out on any one of our rebroadcasting outlets, including WNJC 1360 AM, Philadelphia's Renaissance Station. Check us out on Red State Talk Radio, on High Plains Talk Radio, and Sackheads Media, K98 Talk. And we want to welcome aboard our newest rebroadcasting outlet, ICRN, the Internet's Conservative Radio Network. Check them out at www.conservativeradionetwork.com. And if you missed any of those rebroadcasts, check us out on demand. We're everywhere, folks. We're on Spreaker. We're on Stitcher. We're on TuneIn. We're on iTunes. We're on Podbay. We're on iHeartRadio. And just recently, we've also now added, and of course Player FM, we've talked about them before as well, but we've also added Google Play Podcasts to the mix. Check us out on there. Register with Google and go into Google Play Music, and you can get Behind Enemy Lines there as well. Let's talk a little bit, folks, about what we just heard from Sean McCutcheon. And by the way, check him out at conservativeactionfund.com. I screwed up in the chat room. I put .org, and I got the 404 message there. Didn't really work out too well. Thank God you didn't see it on air. But you know what? Let's talk about this for a second. Is more money better or worse for politics? Your typical liberal from, Park Slope, Brooklyn, People's Republic of New York City will tell you, God, no, corporations are evil. And they'll be telling it to you as they're on their iPhone wearing their Abercrombie & Fitch, playing around with their either their Samsung or their iPhone, and all the other commercialized things about them and with them. And they'll be telling you how corporations are evil, get big money out of politics, it stifles democracy. And it hasn't gotten to the point yet where they realize that when people are motivated, they can do great things. Corporations are motivated because they have self-interest. People need to be just as motivated and go where they can get their message amplified and heard, and that's by supporting organizations that they believe in. Look at the Tea Party, for example. That's a loose conglomeration of people who have banded together for a message, and their voices, as little as they are being heard loud and clear to the point where things have now changed in our political landscape. We have a race right now that is totally to the right of where the primary was in the last presidential cycle. And everybody's going to say Koch brothers. Everybody's going to say, You know, on our side, we're going to say Soros and big money bad and all this other nonsense out there. But the fact of the matter is, how else are you going to influence policy unless you gather together and you're heard and you mobilize and you organize? I can be a man shouting into the wind right now. It's not going to change anything. But I can get together with other people shouting into the wind under a framework that will be effective. And I can make change happen. I think that's the point of McCutcheon versus FEC. Everybody that has an interest in outcomes of government deserve a place to have their voices heard. And you know what? Money and donations happens at the grassroots level all the time. We all support our friend running for city council or for a county office or dog catch, whatever the case may be. We speak with our wallets all the time when we go into a supermarket and I buy Coke over Pepsi. That's me stating a preference and doing it with my wallet. Happens all the time. We shouldn't be surprised it's in politics. It's on a greater magnitude when you're talking about presidential politics. But that's why there are all these issue groups out there. All these issue groups out there. All these different funds out there. Whatever you're really passionate about, support them. If you're big on veterans issues, there's organizations like Concerned Veterans for America that needs your support. If voting rights are your issue, go find True the Vote. Go find Judicial Watch. If there's a social conservative issue out there that you want to find, I'm sure the Radiance Foundation, our friend Ryan Bomberger, will enjoy your support. People vote and choose with their wallets all the time. This should be no different. Going into the chat room right now, I'm going to be reading some comments. We got our friend Jack Buckby in the chat saying that parties with no big business donors win local elections and even enter in the European Parliament. It can be done. It just depends on the message. And that is a key. You can have all the money in the world, Jeb Bush, and not get anywhere. The money doesn't matter. The message does. And when the message and the money meet, great things can happen. Jeb Bush spent a ton per vote. Where did it get him? It's not necessarily where the money is. It's the message. And when message meets money, good things happen. I'm going to let the conversation keep continuing in the chat room, but hit us up on our website, www.BehindEnemyLinesRadio.us. Give us your opinion on the website. Tons of ways to contact us, either through the Facebooks and the Twitters, like I talk about all the time. And let us know what you think. Another comment from Dano is that the NRA is a corporation too. Should they not be able to rep their folks just like the unions do? And there's the flip side. See, Dano hit on something perfect here to talk about. Liberals play this game on the opposite side. It's not big business, it's big labor. And we've seen in other court decisions where it's a captive audience that they have. People must donate to their unions. And that money goes to political means. A lot of that's getting struck down. I know that the Harris case that we talked about last year in the Supreme Court is one of those cases where you didn't have, where it struck down mandatory union dues to go into its political purposes. There's no choice there on their side. They just pay it. How do you combat that? The other side should have the same rights and responsibilities too. And that's what we're looking at, folks. I no wonder. And you know, Dano hit this on the head. That's why you're seeing a backlash against Citizens United and McCutcheon and all these line of decisions. That's a great call. I'm glad he brought it up. But as much as we like slamming the left on all these things, we do have to give them equal time. On this show, we try to be fair and balanced. Yeah, right. We're not fair and balanced. We're right. We're where we should be, on the right. We are right. So what we're going to do right now is basically just provide that opposition voice to the Reverend Al Sharpton. Gene Baradelli behind Enemy Lines will be back with Andre Walker and his latest monologue. But first, Reverend Al, here we go.
The show will be right back. But first, a word from Al Sharpton.
Good evening, Rev. Thanks
Good evening,
to
Rev.
you, Ed. Is this Groundhog Day 2? We are watching that was Attorney General Eric Holder, ABDs, about some Republicans at home are already beating the drums of war. Today, the Pentagon refuted that claim. And he said the American people do not want him to, quote, dwiddling, they do not want him dwiddling his thumbs. You can get a gig as a contortionist. Intravenous fluids and pills coated with gelatin. We don't leave our women or men in uniform behind. It's a monument to the hubris of Dick Cheney, Representative Raul Labrador. Years of abuse. I personally apologize to Mr. Peebles. Just ask to soon-to-be former Congressman. Democrats are outright jitty. CIA's counterterrorism center. Veteran Affairs Secretary Shinseki. Why do I always mess up his name? Shinseki. I love my critics. I have fun with that.
Politics Nation with the Reverend Al Sharpton starts right now. Good evening, Rev.
Good evening, Dr. Dyson.
But wait, there's more.
And we will much about that be committed. So there's no real conflict. Michael Druniak, including Lincoln himself, Daniel Day-Lewis. Behind Monica Lewinsky, the one and only Trey Songz is here. But Allison Lundergan Grimes, Gina DeJesus, when Gina DeJesus, Tea Party challenger Matt Bivens. People don't want to have their Social Security overall. The Republican savior, Mark Rubio's big night. In evolution and Galileo, this whole thing of Galileo, America's changed. Unless IT and Skillets, President Putin doing something similar back in, it won't change this fundamental fact about the GOP. Just how absurd these attacks is. Nearly 6 months after the dangerous traffic jam, the Thai military says, my friend for many years, Ilyana Van Zandt. There's nothing there.
And they gave this guy a TV show? Let's get back to our show.
Gene Baradelli, back behind enemy lines. And folks, I'd be remiss if we didn't go into the, what some would say, untimely demise of the Jeb #! Campaign. I've seen so much lamentation from some of my friends on the Facebooks and the Twitters about the fall of Jeb that we had to have Andre Walker, our friend from townhall.com, UK correspondent over there, do a little bit of a tribute. For those of you in mourning over Jeb #! This one's going to be for you. We're sorry your guy's out. It's not like he didn't have the money. It's not like he didn't have the operation. Just didn't have the message. But to cheer you up, here's our friend Andre Walker with his weekly monologue.
Hello and welcome. My name's Andre Walker, and your weekly monologue starts right now. This week saw a disaster for all lovers of Bush. Firstly, the former Republican governor of Florida and financiers' favourite, Jeb Bush, gave up the ghost after an appalling presidential run. Jeb's efforts were like the 60th anniversary of Disneyland. No matter how much you spend on the fireworks, the TV coverage and the dodgy builds, it just isn't the real deal. Both Disneyland and Jeb were taking the mickey. Seriously, they were taking the mickey. If Fox News is to be believed, $150 million of Jeb's Super Six-Pack now goes to Rubio. But then again, Fox News has been wrong before. I imagine they'll be wrong again. But that's not the biggest blow to lovers of Bush. Of course not. We all know that true lovers of Bush don't blow that often. I'm talking, of course, about the ladies, or rather, the women. Spelt W-I-M-I-N. You know the ones, the hairy girls, who holiday in the Greek island of Lesbos. It's hard to tell whether they're really girls anyway, or just the teenage, fat friends of your little brother. They all wanted the hardline communist Bernie Sanders to beat Hillary in every single primary. And as I said last week, that's got to be because they felt the last Clinton in the White House left a nasty taste in at least one woman voter's mouth. How desperate must Bill have been, though, to do it with Monica? Jesus, God, no, not Monica. She was horrendous. In fact, the big question the liberal media never ask is how did the Clintons amass a $200 million fortune after a life solely in the public sector? Their financials smell worse than the undergarment of Bernie Sanders' teenage fans. And to be fair to American parents, I can understand why they don't want to investigate the financials of the Clintons, because also they don't want to investigate the smell of the undergarments of their teenage children. Nothing wrong with that. In the UK, we all know the risk of Sanders and his sweaty underpants children, because we already have one of Bernie's family in British politics, his hardline brother, Larry, whose Wikipedia describes him as an academic, a social worker, and health spokesman of the far-left British Green Party. You know, the British politician Lord Tevitt once said that any word preceded by the word social is negated by it. So what he meant was, social housing is not real housing. Social media isn't real media. And I'm sorry, Larry, but social working is not really working. Real American taxpayers know the truth. We need the GOP. The problem is they're not getting their act together. Someone needs to tell them they have a patriotic duty. Bush munching and dirty underpants don't float my boat. Don't know if they float yours. And I suspect the ordinary, hard-working American taxpaying family would agree with me. That's this week's monologue. Just time to give you the results of last week's poll when we asked which Hillary you most wanted to be president. Was it Hillary Clinton, Hillary Rhoda, or Hillary Boner? Clinton, Rhoda, or Boner? And the result was that pert, lovely, and American model Hillary Rhoda won it. No one seemed to want Clinton Boner. Can't imagine why that was. So that's it, folks. Continue to debate with me on Twitter at Andre JP Walker. Until next week, goodbye.
Check out Andre's column at townhall.com. Check him out on Twitter at Andre JP Walker. And read Andre's work here, Behind Enemy Lines. Now back to the show.
Gene Baradelli, back behind enemy lines. I have to restrain the laughter every time I play something from Andre. By the way, I had to look up some of the slang there that he was dishing out. Do yourself a favor. We always take Andre's weekly monologues, and we post them up on Spreaker as standalone broadcasts. So check them out on there if you want to listen to it again, and break out your Urban Dictionary for some of the comments that Andre makes. Ooh, boy, we're gonna get some cards and letters on that one. But you know what? It's a lot of fun for us, and we love to do it. I want to bring things back a little bit local now. Obviously, went across the pond, so that was definitely not local. But let's bring it back a little local. There is some issues here in the People's Republic of New York City that need to be brought to light. And I'm talking about hashtag New York values all over the place. You know what? I think we may have to do a regular segment Behind Enemy Lines about all the idiocy that we see with hashtag New York values here from our local papers here in the People's Republic of New York City. It's absolutely ridiculous now. It's gotten to the point, folks, where you're desensitized from it if you're from New York City. You just kind of throw up your hands and say, yep, well, that's par for the course for us. But honestly, if you're not outraged by some of this stuff, I don't know what you can say. So here's our New York values rundown Behind Enemy Lines. Coming out of Ithaca, New York, that's upstate for those of you who don't know the New York map. It's somewhere up there. It's close to Cornell and, that way. The mayor of Ithaca wants to create safe spaces for heroin addicts to shoot up without fear of any intervention, without fear of any reprisal from the police. They want to set up, and this is the first in the nation, folks, they want to set up a supervised injection facility enabling heroin addicts to shoot up without, and I'm telling you, this is just, I can't, the public health ramifications alone, creating a facility for heroin users to shoot illegal drugs into their body under the care of a nurse. And they want this to be a government program. And not only do they want it to be a government program, they want it to be unsupervised by the state and that the city will take care of it. The rationale from Mayor Svante Myrick is that the mayor's father was a drug addict and split from the family when the mayor was young. And quote, "I have watched for 20 years this system that just doesn't work. We can't wait anymore for the federal government. We have people shooting up in alleys and bathroom stalls, and too many of them are dying. So let's have them die under government supervision. That's your solution." Are you kidding me? That's New York values, folks. And you know what? You would think that would be the most ridiculous story coming out of the People's Republic of New York City. But no, it's not. There is a bill pending in the New York City Council that, if passed, will grant illegal immigrants the right to vote. Now, let's just forget about the lunacy of the logistics of putting this together. Let's just forget about the ramifications this will have on city elections and the disproportionality that we're going to see in voting. Especially, we know which way these people are going to go. But the proposal, which is winning support from city's black and Hispanic activists, wants to expand the right to vote to everyone, quote unquote. According to Bertha Lewis, a known whack job and radical supported by Mayor Warren Wilhelm. Excuse me, that's not his name anymore, is it? Bill de Blasio. This is on the heels of New York adopting municipal IDs for illegal immigrants, and it's the further expansion and growth of the liberal agenda. Folks, as a voting rights expert and election law expert here in the People's Republic of New York State, I can tell you that this will create an inequality not for citizens, but for illegal immigrants. You're creating a second-class citizen. You're creating a separate ballot. Because whenever you have an election, folks, you're going to have statewide races, you're going to have local races on the same ballot. But if you pass this, you're going to have separate ballots. What does that mean? More government costs, more government waste. But what it also means is that you're creating a second-class citizenry. You're creating people that are going to get the special illegal ballot. The ballot for the illegals is what they'll call it. You're going to have these people coming out of the shadows only to say, oh, you're getting that ballot. That's one argument. The other argument is, with rights come responsibility. If you want to give people a stake in the process, then guess what? They have to become part of the process. That means becoming a citizen. Russ Gallo wrote a great piece on this on our blog at www.behindenemylinesradio.us. It's on the top of the page right now. Check it out. Give it a good read. Check out the comments as well. Some of them are pretty funny. But you'd think that would be the end of the lunacy that is New York values. Oh no, I say. Because there's another story coming out of the People's Republic of New York City, where a developer with ties to the de Blasio administration is scoring bids for building projects without even winning the bid. A developer with ties to Mayor de Blasio, a name called Hudson Companies, bid $52 million for development rights of some very lucrative property where there's currently a library, and that bid was $6 million and $1 million less than two other bidders. So I guess the winner is now the third highest bidder. Maybe Marco Rubio started the trend. Maybe third place is the new first place. But the CEO of Hudson is a mayoral friend and fundraiser. I'm shocked. I'm wearing my shocked face right now. They're going to build a 30-story residential tower and build a new library, and it's going to a friend of the mayor. My God, where is the government watchdog of today looking at Bill de Blasio? Every bidder had a similar project that they wanted to give. Affordable units, building the libraries. The units differed from one to the other. But since when does the third highest bidder become the winner? This is what you call a sweetheart deal within the political network. There are rules, folks, that are printed on paper, and then there are rules that are made in smoke-filled rooms with a wink and a handshake. Maybe the rooms aren't so smoke-filled now because New York kind of got rid of that, but the room still applies. This CEO and his wife gave more than $9,000 to de Blasio when he ran for public advocate before he was mayor, back 9 years ago. And he had to return the money because the company does business with the city every day. Let me say that again. He had to return the money because there was a conflict of interest. So how do you get around the conflict of interest? Apparently you give away a $50 million project even when they're not the highest bidder. I gotta tell you, folks, Ted Cruz was right. We may not want to admit it here in New York City. We may not want to admit it in other metropolitan areas. New York values is a real thing. It's going on around the nation. And it has nothing to do with the people of New York. It has nothing to do with the values of a individual. It has to do with a political culture. A political culture that rewards the insider. A political culture that disregards individual rights. A political culture that destroys individualism in favor of agenda. We see that here in the People's Republic of New York all the time. And you know what, folks? Until New Yorkers wake up, I'm telling you, this culture of corruption will continue. I mean, we can make this every week segment. Client number 9, Elliot Spitzer, a former governor, caught with a woman who's supposed to be a hooker, apparently. And there was an assault there. This is a small sample of what's at stake around the nation. That's why you need to get involved. Whether it's the money aspect that we talked about with Sean McCutcheon and donating to an issue or a cause. Whether it's becoming a grassroots advocate and fighting for what's right in your heart. This is the year to step up, folks. 2016 is your year. If you don't do it now, when? And if you don't do it now, there may not be an America that you recognize later on when the next opportunity arises for you to do so. Folks, that's about it for me. We're going to wrap things up. My voice is almost done, as you can probably hear. So I want to thank everybody for coming on the show. I want to thank Matt Fairley for joining me in that interview with Sean McCutcheon. I want to thank Sean McCutcheon for coming on the show. Shout out to Andre Walker and to everybody in the chat room. But it's time to shut this puppy down. Gene Baradelli from the People's Republic of New York City saying goodnight, God bless, and we're out of here.
Our position's been compromised. It's time to roll out. Report for debriefing at www.behindenemylinesradio.us and look for regular communications via Facebook and Twitter at BEL_radio. You are the resistance. Behind Enemy Lines. Part of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. A Rock Radio production. Copyright 2015. Back in 7 days.
out.